Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Joined today with Draft Professors Owen, Newt, Daniel. Daniel, this is your first Draft Professor podcast. Welcome to the channel. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me. It's always a blast talking ball, and now that the NFL season is almost officially over with one game to go, a lot of teams are looking forward to the NFL draft.
Yeah. Yep. So I think what all of us have in common is that none of our teams are looking for quarterbacks. So Owen and I are Bills fans. We have the best QB in the league. We're not looking for a quarterback. Newt is a Packers fan, not looking for a quarterback, and then Daniel is a Jaguars fan, not looking for a quarterback. But
Newt, I like how we've got Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence, and like Jim just like slides in like, oh yeah, we got the best quarterback in the league. No questions asked about it or anything like that.
Are you going to argue with Newt? Go ahead, take your shot.
What is understood need not be discussed.
Hey, Love led the NFL this year and win probability added.
So, Newt, would you like to explain the quarterback exercise that we are going to take the audience through?
Yeah.
Kind of like the glue that's going to hold the podcast together.
Yeah. So we're going to just talk about our quarterback scouting reports, doing a little bit of a unique way where we're going to snake draft a team of 4 quarterbacks. We're only talking about quarterbacks. I'm going to start. I'm going to pick a quarterback off the board. We can consider it maybe the top guy that's on our board. I know that there's a couple guys that Owen took a look at that he's really excited to talk about that are maybe a little bit further down. I know that I have a couple guys that are maybe near the bottom of my board that I really do like certain things about. So while, yeah, we want to maybe grab the top guys that are up there, really more looking to be able to talk about some guys that we like, looking for, whoever's left that we like the most. We're not going to double dip, but it's going to snake. I'll go first, Owen, Daniel, and then Daniel will send it back, Owen, to me, and we'll do that for 4 total rounds. So with that, I'm going to take the first quarterback off the board, and I am going to take the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. And Fernando Mendoza, you are going to be my guy. So to give a little bit of background on probably the hottest name in the NFL draft, maybe aside from like an Arvell Reese or a Sonny Styles. I don't even know, though. I think Mendoza is he's the guy this year. Coming into his redshirt junior year at Indiana, got the transfer over from Cal and popped over the summer for a lot of people. He was in my top 10, but he was not super high in my top 10. But I think one of the things that I saw right away about him was 2 things. Number one being the arm talent. You could see that he was a natural thrower. You saw the NFL arm that he had on him. I'm not saying that he's got a cannon strapped to him, a la Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, but he definitely had the talent to really do everything you wanted, putting velocity on balls over the middle of the field, in the intermediate to short, and then being able to put touch over top. And then the other thing is he is just tough as nails. He'll stand in the pocket, deliver. It doesn't matter if he's got a middle linebacker just screaming down at him. He's going to take that shot. He's going to make the pass that he needs to. He's not fading away from it either. He's stepping into his throw. He knows how he needs to make that throw. And really everything about him is just kind of built off of that foundation. And then he takes a step forward this year to Indiana, to kind of I'll call it the Cinderella story, but last year they obviously kind of had their breakup, but this year they really hit the ground running, got their quarterback, and Cignetti was able to put really everything together around him. Now, obviously helped kind of the pieces that team had that were able to help Mendoza out, but he was really the foundation of it. Without Mendoza, that team would not have been what it was. He was able to really showcase his skills and his talent as a NFL caliber starting quarterback. Taking a look at what he's able to do, put the ball outside the numbers. I thought he really showed that this year well on comeback routes, being able to throw a really accurate pass that is, only for his receivers, very uncatchable by the cornerbacks that are covering on the inside. I thought that he's got a really quick and snappy release that allows him to get that ball from the snap out on, bubble screens or on a quick decision because of a blitz. And I think that he understands really well how to give his receivers leverage, even on like deep routes, and understanding where to put the ball beyond there. Now, I think he is going to be maybe a little bit limited with his feet. He's not terrible as a scrambler, but you're not getting anyone that's going to like be lighting the world on fire. Like I said, the arm talent is adequate, but it's not like, he's hucking the ball 60 yards downfield, 70 yards downfield, but he's able to make the throws that you would expect, but not going to necessarily be something that stands out, unlike at least one other guy in this list that we'll talk about, I'm sure. And I do think his mechanics do break down a little bit under pressure. That's where you're going to see some inconsistencies with his throw. I think that's going to be almost the case with anyone, but for him, it did stand out a little bit. But for me, Fernando Mendoza was a guy that, maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, especially, you've kind of got him in that group of three with Simpson and with Dante Moore. And he has just absolutely risen above the rest, in my opinion. And so that is going to be my quarterback one. That's who I'm going to take and go forward from there.
So I have a quick question. Owen, do you have Cam Ward graded higher than Fernando Mendoza?
They're graded the exact same for me. So last year I didn't have the multiplier I do now. So with the multiplier, I currently have Mendoza is in the top 10, has a top 10 grade for me because of that. So Ward would have been similar, but they have the exact same film grade as each other in very different ways. I think Mendoza and Ward are two polar opposite type players. I think they're both great character wise and leadership. I don't have any questions about that, but I think play style wise, the strength and upsides for one versus the other, I think, is very strikingly different. So I do think it's very much the dichotomy of how you can grade out different players and how they can end up in the same spot despite doing different things well versus not so well.
And Daniel, how about you? Do you have Cam Ward graded differently than Fernando Mendoza?
I probably have Ward a touch higher, simply for the I think better tools. Specifically, I think I really like the way that Cam Ward can rip it. I think that definitely Mendoza is probably a more consistent passer or a consistent player for that matter. But I really liked Ward coming out. And I think that, for a lot of people that maybe don't watch the Titans play, they maybe have probably a more soured view of Cam Ward if you just looked at his statistics this year. But I thought that, given the circumstances, he played really, really well this year as a rookie. And, they got a lot going for them this coming off season. Got Robert Saleh in there. They got a lot of capital to do a lot with this offseason.
Dude, I think the most underrated move of this offseason, and I think even after free agency in the draft, is going to be Brian Dable for Cam Ward as his offensive coordinator.
Oh yeah, that's
going to be solid. So nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I was so happy when I saw I wanted him for Buffalo as the head coach. Is one of my guys I wanted to be there. But when I saw he took the job with Tennessee, I was like, that is phenomenal. I was hoping for that when the Giants were tanking last year, that would be the landing spot. I didn't think that Cam Ward would have fit in with the scheme that I've already forgotten who their old head coach's name was.
Callahan.
I was not a big fan of Callahan's scheme, especially for Cam Ward, with timing and requiring accuracy and kind of that more West Coast rhythm style offense. I liked the Dable style, deeper play action, allowed deeper routes to set up and utilize those tools in the run game and stretching the field. So I was hoping that the Giants landed him instead of where they got Abdul Carter. So the fact that the Titans still land Cam Ward and to get Brian Dable to work with him at the same time, I think that they nailed that. Maybe one season after, I thought they would have been. Those two would have been paired up.
Nice.
But okay. I think I'm next in the snake draft, right?
Yes, you are.
So I chose to go second specifically because I wanted to have this take here, and I think Newt knows where I'm going with this.
Are you, okay, you're gonna. I'll say so, you did this just to be angry.
No, so we texted a little bit over the week while we were watching our quarterbacks, and I have an opinion on who is quarterback 2 in the class, and. I mean, I think there is going to be a layup for Daniel after this because I do think there's a clear drop off after quarterback 3. My quarterback.
No, that man, leave it at that noise. That was gold.
Yeah, I know where you're going, and I'm saddened. But go ahead.
So my quarterback too. I don't know. Maybe Dan. I don't know if you do know where I'm going with this because it's not what they said in the comments. That's not what Ryan mentioned. So, but it's in the same vein. So my QB2, and I'm going to draft him with my first pick here, is going to be Drew Aller from Penn State. From me, I went back and watched the games this year, especially like the embarrassing losses to like UCLA and the game got knocked out against Northwestern. And a lot of those games where you're like, what the hell happened? Like, how did UCLA, who hadn't been a ranked team in forever, came up and upset a top 5 team in Penn State after having the run they had last year? And truly and honestly, while he isn't a finished product in the slightest, and I do think he's getting forgotten about because he had that season-ending injury, the tools, the level of control he had of that offense, Aller really didn't show me anything different than what I had coming into the season, where I had him as QB1, I think, coming in, maybe behind Arch, but that was more projection of anything. But Drew Aller as QB1 coming in from the summer, and then I'm watching what I watched last year, and I'm watching again this year, and not much has changed when it came to that. There's still, some of the road bumps you'd like to see when it comes to being comfortable in the pocket, trusting to win from the pocket as opposed to trying to make something happen. But a lot of those losses came from he got down early at the UCLA game. Their defense gave them no help, and his weapons around him this past season, between the running backs that really disappointed and their wide receivers, just gave him no help whatsoever. So for me, if you liked Drew Aller coming into this season from the summer, there is nothing he showed on those 4 games or 5 games that he played that, to me, would make you think and reconsider how you felt about him, besides the fact he had that major injury. So I'm still going to hitch my wagon to him. I think that I'd rather bet on high-level traits and him recovering from the injury than a player that we're probably going to talk about in a second that I am not the biggest fan of because of the lack of said traits that you're going to be banking on in development.
Okay.
Oh, man.
So, Daniel, where are you on Drew Aller?
I really liked him last season, and this season we'll talk about him a little later. Garrett Nussmeier, I'm sure. I thought that it was a lot easier for me to convince myself that Garrett Nussmeier's downfall, if you want to call it that, was a lot more due to offensive scheme and injuries rather than Drew Aller's. He just didn't quite look like the same player that we saw last season. And it's difficult. You really like a guy to show improvement, and he could have been a really, really top prospect coming into the 2026 draft. Obviously, the injury also sucks. But even prior to that, I didn't see the same guy that we saw last season, and it wasn't. I didn't feel it was as much of his surroundings as I did with maybe Nussmeier, and I like Aller, but I just certainly don't have him as QB2. Though I do enjoy the planting your flag on the top of the mountain there for Drew Aller. My sister goes to Penn State, so I have a fondness for Penn State and those guys. But not quite as high on Drew.
Yeah, and my brother got married at Penn State, so like anytime we can talk about a Penn State player, I have
I was at the SMU playoff game actually in 10-degree weather.
Nice.
That was cold.
Nice. And Newt, where are you on Drew Aller from Penn State?
Not high. Aller is for me. He's like midday 3 for me. I think it's some of the things that Daniel said. He didn't take a step forward for me. I think that the things that Aller struggled with last year, with some consistency in hitting, I don't want to say layups, but like throws you would expect. He continued with. I had in my weaknesses for Aller, one of the first things I have written is he was too reliant on Tyler Warren in 2024. I need to see him operate without him as an option, and I saw him this year without him as an option, and he really, really struggled to be an effective option. So for me, when I take a look at that, I see a guy that the throwing motion and like the mechanics behind it, like the guy's got a cannon for an arm, but like it seems a little robotic and it seems a little awkward at time, and I think it leads to like some timing issues. And I don't think he's got the greatest anticipation. I don't think he's like a super stellar athlete, and it's just all of those things where it's like I see the arm, I see what has been, but is that more of a product of having things around him that helped, or was it a product of like him as a player? So definitely still a draftable grade. He's top 10 quarterback for me. He's just unfortunately not a top 3 quarterback for me.
Yeah, I think for me, like you were talking about, he was definitely Tyler Warren reliant. Like we all remember the playoff game they lost in Notre Dame. I think it was Notre Dame last year, where there was not a single completion made to wide receiver that entire game. And you can look at that as a detriment to him. I took that more as, yes, Tyler Warren was a dominant force, and he was my number 2 overall player last year. Like he was ridiculous. But I do think that you saw the same team with the same issues that was in that playoff game last year that didn't have now Tyler Warren to make it easier for anybody else to operate in that offense. And while I do agree, I do think, let me make this clear. Going second is terrible because there was nobody after Mendoza to really stake your claim as going to be like a definitive guy. So I do think that he did struggle to replicate it. I think it was the same thing we saw when Brock Bowers left Georgia, and there was kind of this vacuum of talent. And even, sometimes you can have a player that's so good that it does detrimentally affect a quarterback's development because he's trying to not overcompensate for that. So I personally think he's a better athlete than most give him credit for. I do think that the throwing motion, you're right, is a bit wonky at times. It can throw off his rhythm and timing, especially on some of those easier throws. But the plays where he needs to make things happen, and even like in that UCLA game where it was terrible. The Oregon game I thought he played great. And in the UCLA game, he put his team in position.
He looked good against Oregon. That was one of the games I watched. I really genuinely thought he was kind of surprising at how well he played.
Yeah, the UCLA game, they lost in embarrassing fashion, and he was healthy for the whole game. But for me, a lot of the times when I found myself like breaking down what happened on this drive, why did they not finish? A lot of it came to there was like multiple fumbles from players that weren't him, lots of drops where he's putting the ball where it needs to go. A lot of the times when I saw, and they were still into that game towards the end because he single-handedly dug them back out of it. Again, with the supporting cast, I felt was more subpar than anything. So for me, I gave him a lot more leeway than I think a lot more people are going to give him. And the fact that he has the tools and showed previously, like comparing to him like a Nussmeier, like we were talking about, where as opposed to LR, Nussmeier is on the smaller side, not the strongest arm. Like you don't have the traits to fall back on to like, bank on the regression because of some outside influences. So for me, LR checks boxes athletically and physically talent-wise that I'm willing to think that this was either a down season and or just a lack of Penn State with the talent around him, especially because they fired the coach. Like the season was one of those disaster classes from Penn State in general.
So Daniel, you're up for QB3, and then we'll kind of go around, and then you'll be back up for QB4.
I think I'd imagine you guys know who I'm going to take here in Ty Simpson from Alabama.
Absolutely. Owen's got him as like quarterback 15 in this draft, but
so we'll start with like he does so much pre-snap stuff. That's like super rare for quarterbacks nowadays. So I really like that. Changing protection, changing plays at the line of scrimmage, something that's QB3. Oh, you guys are doing okay. Gotcha. I thought that was somebody commenting as well in agreement with. All right.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're good. I was wondering if somebody else had Drew Aller at QB2. But no, there's so much to like about Ty Simpson. His accuracy, it fell off a little bit, admittedly, down the stretch. But especially in the short and intermediate, he completed 71% of his passes. And something I will key in on, he only completed 37% of his deep throws. For a guy whose arm strength is more than fine enough, I'd consider it above average. Really savvy in the pocket. I thought that he did a really, really good job. He can hold the ball for a little bit too long. Maybe trying to create some plays there and maybe turning some, instead of just dump offs or throwaways or whatever, creating some negative plays himself. But there's a lot to like about Ty Simpson, and for a guy that, despite being despite being a guy that's been around for a while, really came on this season and doesn't have he simultaneously has experience and doesn't. So it's kind of strange. Him and Chambliss both have a lot of experience, but also don't. I thought Ty Simpson, especially early on this season, looked really, really well, similar to Aller, where you kind of fall off there. But as opposed to Aller, where you had an off season, it was more of Alabama as a whole, and Ty Simpson. He just wasn't as accurate in the second half of the season. He's a fairly good athlete. 7 of his touchdowns, passing touchdowns, 7 of his touchdowns in total came outside of the pocket. He's not one of the Taylon Green guys that's going to go torch you, but he's a guy that I think is got really solid pocket awareness, pretty good outside of the pocket, and I really like his both his accuracy and his pre-snap stuff.
Okay, so Newt, where are you on Ty Simpson?
I think you hit the nail on the head with where he is. I think the thing that I would add that I found frustrating for myself was the play under pressure. I think that, and we're going to talk about it for every quarterback. Every quarterback is worse when they play under pressure. It seemed to me that he really, really struggled to adapt to the speed. I look at the game like Oklahoma when I think that was kind of when his first big hiccup came. Like, he was flying pretty high, playing really good football for Alabama after, that first road loss to Florida State. And then that Oklahoma game got him kind of off where he was. And Oklahoma showed him a lot of things that he wasn't necessarily, I don't want to say comfortable with, but he struggled to adapt and to adjust, in my opinion. And for me, that was something that kind of showed a glaring weakness for him. And I think that was definitely a struggle. I think that with him, he's going to have the baseline traits that you can have it and be a successful quarterback. I know Owen's got opinions on that. But yeah. I think he's going to have enough to get there and do the job. And I think that you said it, like, the processing pre-snap is solid. I'd like to see him be a little bit more of an anticipatory thrower, especially if he has such a good understanding of a defense. Like, trust your throw, then trust what your receivers are doing. It might be because this was his first year starting and he needs to grow into that more. So definitely willing to kind of lean there. But I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of those points that you brought up. He's my QB2 as well. So
I want to be clear. Ty Simpson's my QB3. Let's not get that twisted. I think I see the same player everybody else sees. It's just how I value it that's different. I'm a bit lower on how the athleticism and arm strength weigh out for him. I think he is just average. Like, I think he can survive in the NFL, but it's not anything you're going to hang your hat on as, like, this can lead you to the next level. It's going to unlock things for your offense. I think, if anything, it's a limiter, which already kind of puts him into the more not the truck, but they're the load that needs to be carried type player. Whereas some of these more elite quarterbacks in the league are going to be the truck. They're pulling the rest of the team with them when you need them to. His biggest pro is that he is hyper intelligent. Only started 15 games, but like you guys said, checking into different formations, checking into protections, identifying pre-snap and post-snap when he's kept clean, I think is super impressive, especially for a guy with as little starting experience as he does have for Alabama. But I really did see someone who struggled a lot when under pressure. Like, I felt he was accurate, except for when he couldn't really get his feet underneath him and he was being forced off his platform and couldn't set the throw. His accuracy did falter a bit. When he is making decisions with the football, he's really good. He had only one interception on the whole season compared to 27 touchdowns. But I think what also plays in decision making is whether or not you are taking off, you're using your legs to get yards as opposed to just throwing it into your most available receiver possible, or throwing it away and taking no gain on that play, or when to throw it away versus when to force it. There's a lot of times where I felt he could be a lot better off script, and I felt like his off script play was just very much limiting in the similar way to how I felt like when Carson Beck was getting talked up as like a top quarterback prospect back when he was at Georgia, where you saw a lot of that same stuff where it's like, okay, he understands what he's doing. He's executed the offense, but when you're asking them to go out there and, manage the chaos and be that next level difference maker, he's struggling to do so. And when you get to the NFL, you're not going to be in Alabama's clean pocket the entire time. You're not going to have Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams as your wide receivers. You're not going to have all these stud weapons that are so above the rest of the competition that you have the time and the comfort to make those plays. So for me, he's a player that you don't want to draft him and then stash him because, like, you're not really banking on him developing. Usually that's for guys with high upside tools that are needing the mental side to process better and get time. You don't want him to, but you want him to like maybe start right away because he doesn't have a lot of experience playing. You have the same with the Anthony Richardson effect. He needs to get reps. But I just don't see a lot of upside with his tech or with his lack of physical traits that are higher above anybody else's. And the fact that he struggles so much with pressure and when teams threw a bunch of different looks at him that he wasn't anticipating for, where they really started to disguise things up and make things come late to his processing. He really started to struggle. So I do think that I'm just held back on him for that reason.
Okay.
Good to go for 4?
Yeah,
yeah.
go for 4.
Sure. So I'll have Garrett Nussmeier. He's a guy that, similar to Drew Aller, that like if he came out last year, was like super well regarded, kind of in the similar mold, to where like it sucks for both of them that their stock fell so far, both facing injury issues. Nussmeier played through them with an abdominal tear, I think it was. And like how much the LSU offense changed this year with a lot of quick passes. He had one of the quicker time to throws in NCAA this year. As well as
shit! I just looked at that. That's wild. Damn. Sorry.
A lot of screenplays, and it kind of devalued how good he was as a passer. Super, super accurate. He's obviously the son of Doug Nussmeier. I think he is among the best in this class of understanding the game of football, where you're supposed to go with the ball, when you're supposed to do it. He can play a little hero ball sometimes. I am worried about his frame. He came into the Senior Bowl at 202 pounds. He likes to stand in the pocket, and kudos to him because he does a great job with it, but he takes a lot of hits in the pocket. He tries to wait as long as he can to deliver that perfect throw. And you saw it this year where he's banged up. He's not the biggest guy. He's not super, he doesn't have the mobility of some of the other guys in this class. But I think that the scheme this year of just him never throwing deep. So I did the top 100 FBS quarterbacks and I looked, he was 100th in deep throw percentage, 10.4%. He was 97th in ADOT, average depth of target. And I think that really handicapped them this year with what they really wanted to do. He was still fairly accurate. I think that those two things really, really hurt him, though. And he is also, I'm looking at his injuries, see how much that impacted his play. Last season, he had a 9% pressure to sack ratio. This season, it was 19. I'm curious if that injuries kind of played a part into that and made him, not the player that we saw last year, as well as his scheme.
So, Owen, where do you have Nussmeier?
So I was high on him coming into the year because I did feel like he was smart enough and accurate enough to overcome a lot of the physical limitations he had. He is 6 foot. He's just over 200. I'm trying to double check the Senior Bowl measurement to see if he maybe gained an inch somewhere. And that was now like 6'1". But if he is still around 6 foot 200, that is strikingly small for a quarterback, especially when one that is also not the biggest armed or the fastest or able to really overcome a lot of those height or just not having great physical traits. You're going to see, I love quarterbacks that have physical traits over anything because you can always teach them up more. So I do think that for me, the fact that he lost a bit of his accuracy, a bit of his processing, whether it was the offense or not, I do think that was the one thing that kind of held him on for me to being a guy that could go a bit higher. So I do think he's a player that I definitely dropped probably the most on him of any quarterbacks in this class, just from what I saw and what I was already kind of teetering on the edge with and giving them the benefit of the doubt from summer scouting.
Okay. And then Owen, who is quarterback 5 going to be?
This is fun because this is where you start getting guys where you're going to hear a lot of day threes getting tossed around for me here. I know there's a big fan club for Cole Payton. I'm not super there with him when it comes to that. I did just talk about how I love guys with talent. I think if he's on the board and to come back around, I might grab him. I might be going off the board a bit again here, but another player that I liked a lot in the summer, maybe a bit lower on, and then I'm still not. I fell off of him a bit more than I was in the summer. He didn't meet projections, but I'm still a pretty decent fan of as like a backup type player. I'm going to go with Miller Moss from Louisville. Another player, we're talking about guys kind of undersized, rely a lot more on finding the open holes in zones, being accurate, getting his guys the ball in space, allow them to create for the catch, being more careful with the ball. I think he's a step below all the guys we talked about to this point. But he was the last guy I watched, and it was more of an update than anything. And he isn't as accurate or as good as a processor as I thought he was going to be, taking the next step in Louisville. But he does do enough that I feel like I get the same feelings with him that I got when I watched Jake Haener at Fresno State. Just a kind of guy that's tough, good leader, doesn't have all the physical tools, but is enough in the pocket and can operate an offense enough that you're going to keep him around as like a backup with maybe some like spot starter developmental potential.
So, Newt, where do you have Nussmeier and Moss?
So Nussbus, I struggled with him. I think it's, Daniel did a really good job of pointing out a lot of the things that he had working against him. I think with the injury, there's something to be said there, but ultimately he's a guy that did drop down just because I think he was riding more on like what he was able to do and be special, even given that frame and given his, I don't want to say lack of mobility, but like he's not going to light the world on fire as a scrambler. He's not really, in my opinion, doing a lot of things that like go so far above and beyond. So for me, when you kind of see him in a situation that is maybe not as ideal, he did drop down a little bit. So he's quarterback 5 for me, like right around quarterback 5 or quarterback 6 for me. So, I struggle with him because of the big differences from last year to this year in terms of like what was around him, but also I would have really liked to see him, show out a little bit better in terms of like that improvement, kind of very similar to what we talked about with Drew Aller. And then Miller Moss, I actually did not do a rewatch for. With this, I wasn't a huge Miller Moss guy going into the season, and I tried to prioritize the guys I did check out. So I did not get eyes on him at Louisville. I know from the games that I've watched where I've kind of seen him, like has still shown that flash. Watching the Shrine Bowl last night, really wasn't impressed by him there. I thought that there were a couple guys that showed out a lot more than Miller Moss did, in my opinion. But I don't have anything as far as like a actual breakdown of him to share.
Okay, and who is QB 6 and 7?
Well, QB 6 and 7, I couldn't resist. This is kind of fun because I think I'm going to get two guys that I really like. I'm going to go with Taylor Green for my QB 6. And if you're at all watching anything with the Senior Bowl, then you are getting to see like exactly what Taylor Green is. He threw just a shot down the field to Malachi Fields today, probably like a 35-yard pass, put it right on the, I shouldn't say right on the money. Fields had to lay out and get it, but put it only where Fields could get it. And it was a beautiful pass. 2 plays later, throws a pick on a rollout. And it's like, dude, like it's who he is. And it's so frustrating. One of the things that, I look at when you check out like PFF stats and the analytics behind it, big time throw percentage and turnover worthy play. His big time throw percentage was 3.2, which is low. I would like to see that a lot higher. 5 is like a magic number for me, but like even 4 is like, okay, we can live with that. His turnover worthy play percentage was 5.3. Like I want that the other way for him. So with him, like look at that, you look at the production, you say, all right, what the hell is going on with this guy? The number one arm that he has and the arm talent is undeniable. He can throw the ball. The play that I'm talking about today from the Senior Bowl practice, he threw it like off platform, falling backwards, and just flicked it. And it went effortlessly. I think he's probably got the best arm in this draft class, in my opinion. He has just such special talent with that. And then the other thing is going to be the athleticism. He moves special. He moves like a running back. There's a clip out there that I put up on the Twitterverse of him just breaking the ankles of Michael Taff in a design quarterback run, or maybe it was a play option. But he's just so special with the ball in his hands, and he can do so many things. And he has kind of like the traits and everything. It's just his ability to read the field, I don't think is the greatest. I think the mental processing for him struggles. I think that he doesn't have, you talk about the play speed for him. He's super athletic, but when he is trying to kind of go through his progressions and work all that, it's just the processing speed is not where I need it to be for him. So as much as I loved him for the things that he does that are really, really special, I think that he still is a long way from a viable starter in the NFL. I think he's got an option to kind of be a legitimate backup type quarterback. I think of, honestly, like Malik Willis, what he's been for the Packers, and what Taylor Green could do if he was given that opportunity in a system where, hey, if you can sit and learn behind a guy and really kind of refine some of those elements, you've got the tools and the traits to potentially kind of step in and showcase what you have and maybe move on to a big contract and get your shot somewhere. I don't think that's going to be his rookie contract. I think he's going to really have to grind for that and improve those elements. But the traits, the intangibles in terms of, like the God-given gifts that he has, man, they are so tantalizing, where I really do like Taylor Green as a prospect.
Okay. And then who is QB7?
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Carson Beck for QB7. Carson Beck for me is going to be a guy that I know I'm going to be higher on. He's QB4 for me, actually. Overall, I've got him higher than Taylor Green. I just think Taylor Green's a really fun player to talk about. But Carson Beck this year, I'm not quite sure for me that he did a ton to necessarily set the world on fire, but he was able to show his ability to continue to be an operator of an offense, to not be a detriment to an offense, and work within the parameters that you look for success. I think number one of the biggest things about him that I hate is his inability to be effective outside of the pocket. I really struggle with him anytime that he's not, sitting in between the tackle box. When he's scrambling, I always feel like he's going to just take one wrong step and his whole body's going to fall apart. It's the most uncomfortable thing you've ever seen. It's like cringeworthy. You're like, just fall to the ground so I don't have to watch this anymore, man. But then you see him kind of off platform in a bootleg or anything like that. And like he can play in a bootleg, he can play in a play action, but it's not like his game. He wants to take the ball in shotgun, read the field, which I think he does at a decent level. He's got an adequate NFL arm, and I think that he's got the ability to place the ball fairly well downfield into a lot of places that you would want a quarterback to, where I look at him and I say, man, like, I'm not going to, get this guy on board in order to, change my team. But if I had to have him running my team and you put the right things around him, I don't hate that. I think of, what Jimmy Garoppolo was able to do in that 49ers offense. And, they say that anyone can run Kyle Shanahan's offense. And, well, maybe if that's the case, then, that's a spot that Carson Beck could fall into in 3 years when Brock Purdy gets too expensive for them or whatever. I don't know. I'm bullshitting at this point in terms of landing spots. But my point remains that I think he's a good enough player where if you put a team around him, he's got the arm talent. He's got the understanding and the ability to put the ball around the field, to place an accurate ball with good timing, and play in a type of system where he could find success at the next level. Once again, I think that he's a guy that has some things working against him You take a look at the athleticism, not overly exciting for me. When you take a look at the decision making, I think there are some times where he's playing hero ball. I point to the Bama Georgia game last year, and the reason that game, was almost won was his ability to like just throw it down the field, but it was also lost at the same time because he tried to force it into double coverage down the field with still like 40 seconds left. I think he still continued to do that this year, and it just kind of makes me wonder how much of that can you reel back without, completely crushing his ability to uncork the ball at times. So Carson Beck, he's my quarterback 4, but I'm going to take him right here with the 7th pick.
Okay. And then now with the snake draft, we're actually back to Owen, right?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
I think at this point, even though he's not my favorite, I think I do have to stick with my assumption. I know I just took Miller Moss, which is the opposite of this, but I'm going to go back to the traitsy guys here, and I'll go Cole Payton.
Okay.
Taylor Green got sniped before me. I think they're both players that are fairly similar. I think Green is a bit better when it comes to like overall athleticism and performing at a higher level and showing that he can be. He's like a dominant athlete even at the SEC level. With Green, he's built. The only thing I don't really love about him is that like they're not going to cover while covering Peyton. And that way, what I like a little bit better about Peyton is like Green is built like an NBA small forward or power forward. He's like so tall, but like he's super like frail looking, like really skinny. And I'm worried about how he's going to hold up with the physicality in the NFL. Like he reminds me of any Denver Nuggets fans out there. He looks like Peyton Watson out there, where he's just this long, gangly dude that looks like he gets hit by a safety flying down that can actually line him up and give him the pads, and he'll fall apart. But yeah, Cole Payton, I love him as an athlete, right? He's big and stocky, can really push the ball down the field and can move, as we've seen with a lot of these North Dakota State quarterbacks. For me, it's just the throwing motion is so ugly. I do not like it. It causes a ton of his problems where when he's missing throws or he's off time or off base, I do think he struggles because it's that awkward way, and he's much more open to being strip sacked from behind. Similar with Taylor Green, where I think Green isn't able to. He has a better motion, significantly better like base throwing motion, but they're not able to really change their arm angles and manipulate it while they're on the run, opening them up to a lot of swipe strip sacks from behind. With Peyton, I do think he is a good athlete with good size and can push it, and I do think there's a lot of desirable traits there. You're just going to need to like get him in a lab and rework that, because like there's some guys like when Philip Rivers came out, I've heard a lot of people talking about this since he was mentioned as a coaching search for my football team. I saw a lot of people talking about his throwing motion and some of these other guys that like maybe he could help quarterbacks develop that bit more. And Philip Rivers once said like it's just how I throw a football. It's how it works for me, and that's fine. But like to a point, you can only do that to a certain point. Like Cole Payton's is to the point where I'm not willing to say that's going to work out. We just need to let him do his thing. There's some throwing motions that just need to be retooled and refixed, and that's on top of some of the other stuff, mental processing, getting him up to the speed of competition. There's a lot of stuff that I'm not in love with Cole Payton, but I do think him going at 8 is going to be where it stops.
So a note on Cole Payton. Do you guys know he started a game at running back in 2024?
I
can believe it.
I saw that. Yeah, it was like the first game of the season, wasn't it?
Yeah, first home game, Tennessee State.
Okay.
He had 10 more career rushing touchdowns than passing touchdowns. So like just super weird quarterback like almost like unheard of. It's like super strange watching him. And he kind of like, as you mentioned, it kind of looks that way with that super loopy.
Yep.
It's like awkward, but he does it really good. Like he's got nice touch on the ball deep. There's a lot to like about him. It's
going to take a lot longer than 1 year to fix what he's got going on right now.
Yeah. But like I've seen some people jokingly throw around like Taysom Hill type stuff, and like that'd be super fun, at least in the short term, because none of these guys that we're talking about now are going to be like, start day one, maybe starters. So, it's like, hey, what value can we get out of a guy? And, if you have a creative OC who's willing to give that stuff out while he develops. There's still a lot to like about him. The guy just, one of the commenters just said his 11.3% big time throw percentage. He likes to push the ball downfield. I think he's pretty good at it, considering his wonky throwing motion. But yeah, he's that's like as weird as a quarterback prospect as you're gonna get, really. Especially coming from the FCS level, where it's really hard to like envision him as an NFL quarterback. But there's a lot to like there.
So
Okay.
I was going to say, I think that puts you up for 2 picks in a row.
Yeah, that threw me for a second. I had to pause. I was like, okay, we're going to Daniel now. So Daniel, I have a couple of questions.
Mhm.
So any comments on was Miller Moss, Taylon Green, Carson Beck, Cole Payton? Any of those guys snipe who you would be taking here?
Probably Taylon Green. I maybe have looked at Cole Payton as my second pick. As I mentioned, it's just like it's so weird to envision him as like an NFL quarterback as it stands right now. But like Taylon Green, there's everything to like traits wise. Owen's big traits guy, and like how much better does it get? It's like similar-esque to Anthony Richardson. To where it's a guy's got everything you can do you want from a quarterback. It's just you got to kind of point him in the right direction and file some things down with him. He's another guy that I thought you mentioned the turnovers. He was 90. I looked at the top 100. He was 99th in turnover worthy percentage of the top 100 FBS quarterbacks. That's really tough. But at the same time, he led FBS quarterbacks in yards per carry. And he had 994 yards per carry. It's really strange. His average depth of target was pretty deep, but he just really didn't throw the ball super deep down the field for a guy that has the arm talent like he did. That's certainly curious, as well as both Taylon Green and Cole Payton, the super long, extremely high TTTs, time to throws. That really gets you into trouble. It's kind of a double-edged sword, though, because you want those guys to make plays out of structure, but at the same time, we don't want to do it at the cost of sacks and turnovers. That's just something to keep in mind for all dual-threat quarterbacks of that really can get you into some trouble sometimes. PFF credited him with 12 sacks of his own fault. And I think that, I think that was 5th most in FBS level. So that's certainly something to keep in mind of with any dual threat quarterback.
Okay. And then who are the next 2 quarterbacks coming off the board in our quarterback exercise?
Yeah, I'll go Luka Altmaier. I mentioned him before we came on. I really like him. I'm kind of almost in the opposite sense of Owen, where later in the draft, if I can't convince myself that there's a high enough probability that a Tulsi guy is going to turn it around, there's a lot to like about a late rounder guy who you're confident can come in immediately should a guy go down and really run your system. You guys were talking about Shanahan's system. Luka Altmaier is like textbook point guard. Put him in there. He's fantastic. He's got experience under center. He's got experience with play action. He's got pre-snap experience. He's really pretty accurate for this class. It's up there for among the top. He's efficient under pressure. He had a 76% adjusted completion percentage under pressure. And the big time throws aren't there, but that's fine. That's not really his game. He's an okay athlete. He's not fantastic outside of structure, but he did 500 rushing yards, or nearabouts anyhow. So, that's 8% off target throwing percentage was the 8th lowest this year in FBS. I think that there's a lot to like with him just coming in and being a solid starter. We saw how crucial that can be this past weekend with Jarrett Stidham in Denver. The snow was obviously hellacious there, but there's sometimes you need a guy just come in, run your system, and maybe play a couple games for you and be a serviceable backup. And I think that Luke Altmaier can certainly do that for you.
Okay, and then who is your 4th QB and the next QB off the board in our exercise?
I'll say Sawyer Robertson. I think we were Owen's a big Tracy guys. I really like Sawyer Robertson's arm, but similar with a lot of Tracy guys, it's just the consistency and accuracy that really comes to bite him in the butt. I'd really like to see him be more consistent. He's one of those guys. If you just took like his top 5 throws or top 10 throws from this season, you'd think that he's like as good as it gets. And then it's just the like every down to down or drive to drive consistency that's really lacking there. He's not the rushing threat that a lot of these other guys, maybe a Taylor Green or a Diego Pavia or some of the other guys that we've talked about. But as for a quarterback who really spread the ball around and threw it all over the place, he was also pretty good at avoiding sacks. He had a 15% pressure to sack ratio, which I think was like pretty among the highest in the class. It was 36th among the top 100 FBS quarterbacks. He attacked deep down the field. He had a 9.8 average depth of target, pretty good, 16.4% deep throwing percentage, and a really quick TTT, which is really weird for a guy that threw the ball as deep as he did. So I think if you could just like wrangle him in a little bit and get some more consistency out of him, I think he can be a serviceable tongue twister, serviceable backup in the NFL at some point.
Okay. And then, Owen, we are back to you. Who is your final quarterback?
Yeah, this is where I want to try to get a little fun here because and I do agree with Daniel to a point where I do like traitsy quarterbacks, especially when we're talking about like investing earlier picks into them. I think once you get to the point where you're in the later day threes, you're looking for the guys that are just gonna. If you're drafting a quarterback, to maximize that draft pick, you need get a guy that can maybe make a roster. So getting these less toolsy, more plug and play system career backup type quarterbacks is going to be the way to go. Just for this exercise, though, it's just I like talking about some of these guys that can do some crazy stuff, and then, but in all realistically options, I think once you get past like the Ty Simpsons and you're into like the Garrett Nussmeyers, even to the point where like you're talking about like a Cade Klubnik or something like that, where there's guys that can be more low upside. But you can have come into your offense and maybe operate in a way that you'd like. You can definitely see that. But for me, I'm stuck between a few names. I kind of want to throw out a name that I don't think anybody's going to ever mention ever, just because I do like his natural arm talent and ability to move a bit. We'll talk about it. And I know this isn't technically a guy that's going to be QB 11 we're on right now. I like just to shout out a name that I was also considering is like Gronowski. From who just lit up the East-West Shrine Bowl from Iowa, who was previously at South Dakota.
You're not saying Gronowski?
I'm not saying Gronowski.
Oh, dude, I was so excited if you were. I got jacked watching him last night.
Yeah, he was awesome last night. I got to do more into him after watching that, and I got a little bit of eyes on him, but he's somebody I need to do a full dive in on this year in Iowa. I watched him a bit at South Dakota.
That man throwing the block for who was the running back? Whatever. When he threw the block on that that kick outside to get the touchdown, that's pure football right there.
Yeah. I think just to wrap this up so I'm not dragging on for forever, the name I'm going to pick here, and we're already talking about quarterbacks that are probably going to go undrafted at this point, but we'll go with Caden Salter from Colorado. I'm pulling the names out here. I watched some really weird quarterbacks for this. He was a quarterback. He was a player that he transferred over from Liberty, had the task of replacing Shadur Sanders and fighting off a five-star recruit, and he got benched a few times because Colorado as a team this year kind of fell apart. So I do think that he wasn't given the best opportunity to show what he can do. But a lot of the plays he does make, it shows a lot of the different arm angles, ability to be accurate while off platform. A lot of the stuff that doesn't come naturally to some of these quarterbacks that are going to be more physically limited. I think he has the Spencer Rattler syndrome where he thinks he's a better athlete than he actually is. There's a lot of plays. They use him on design runs a lot, and he got positive yardage, but it was like a Taylor Green houses half his plays, whereas he's getting hawked by linebackers, and he's not like this elite athlete, but he's got some movement to his game. And he does make some plays where you're like, wow, that really popped off the screen. He'll be a fun preseason name to follow. at this point, I just wanted to kind of highlight somebody that I felt like had some talent, but I hadn't really heard a lot of people mention his name. So don't go into it expecting to watch this stud player or even have a draftable grade on him, but someone who is going to be just a fun throw on watch if you're, at the end of your night and you want to have one last quarterback to your name list to throw out there in a podcast like this.
So we've covered Caden Salter a few times in this channel. So Durst, I think, had the best Caden Salter take. So another Draft Professor actually podcast Wednesdays at 7. But if you close your eyes and you imagine that Deion Sanders has a son that plays quarterback, it's Caden Salter. What do you think, Owen?
That's fun.
I think that's accurate. I mean, that was definitely the disconnect when you saw Shedeur playing quarterback college. It's like, wow, he's not this super crazy athlete or like this crazy personality type quarterback at all. Like he has some moxie.
He's not
to
a
him,
crazy personality. He's
Well,
not
no,
a crazy personality.
I'm saying he had some moxie to him, but he wasn't like a psychopath like his father was when he played. But like Salter is definitely more of and it reflects in his game where he plays like a madman. Like he plays like a crazy person. And that's what I'm talking about. Like Shedeur, the book on him was he was more like, can be accurate, a little more conservative in his play style. I can see where Durst is coming from with that.
Yeah. Okay, and Newt, who is the final quarterback of our exercise here?
So it's not going to be a player that is going to take anyone by surprise, but I think there's going to be a bit of a flag plant, so we can end on those fireworks. My last quarterback, I'm going to take once again the low hanging fruit, Cade Klubnik, and he's going to be the quarterback that I talk about. The flag plant comes in that he's my quarterback 3 in this year's draft class. So I think that with him, he is to me as Aller is to Owen. In the sense of, I look at what he was last year, I look at what he was able to do this year, and there were a lot of things wrong with that Clemson team. And I feel like I've made this excuse too many times where one of these guys I'm talking about has to be the reason, and maybe it is Klubnik, and maybe I'm just like miles off base. But I take a look here at a guy that statistically had a decent season, really didn't do a ton to, light the world up with deep throws downfield. I think he's got the ability to push the ball a adequate amount. He's not gonna, be ripping 60-yard throws off or anything like that. I do think he's got to improve his touch on some of his shorter throws, and with his athleticism, I don't think it quite matches his scrambling ability. Like I think that he could be dangerous in space, but you don't see that from him. But when I take a look at him and I look at what I wrote down last year, I think he's got a strong throwing motion. He's got a nice, efficient type arm. He can get the ball to all parts of the field, whether it's inside, outside, deep, or short. Like I said, I think he has the ability to kind of put those on place when you're looking outside the numbers, which is something that I really like to see. I think the pocket presence he has is phenomenal. I know some of the numbers that Daniel's throwing out, taking a look at like pressure to sack ratio, 11.6 for him. Really good number.
Very good.
Yeah, when you take a look at what that is, I would say like 15 to 20 is where you're going to see a lot of these guys. For him to be at 11.6, he's got a good understanding of the pocket. His legs do help him out a lot in that. So he's able to kind of save himself by the ability to be mobile and kind of move outside the pocket. That scramble percentage a little bit lower than some of the guys. Like I said, that I would expect that from 4%. That also tells me he's looking downfield. He wants to throw the ball. He's keeping his eyes down there. And like I said, I think he has really good touch on his deep ball. For me, I look at a guy across the board that I think he does a lot of things average to above average. And while that's not a top, 32 pick worthy, I've got him right now as like a fringe top 100 player. And so like, once again, QB3 for me, he is like barely a day 3 or day 2 grade. He'll probably be like somewhere in that range for me. I would guess like 80 to 100 when it's all said and done for me. But he's my quarterback 3 because I feel pretty safe about what he gives me. I talked about Carson Beck in the same vein. And I think I kind of have, especially in this draft, when I look at it, can you come in and can you do the things that I'm looking for from an NFL quarterback. Are you going to be able to deliver on those? I really think Cade Klubnik can do that. So he's, like I said, quarterback 3. He's going to be quarterback 12 for this exercise, and the last guy that I'm going to grab.
I definitely think that we're all planting our flag into a quarterback that sucked this year, but was good last year. I have Aller. Daniel did Nussmeier. You did Klubnik. I can see it with Klubnik, whereas like I think Klubnik, I like him better than Nussmeier right now because he does have better tools. There was just not a quarterback on this list that I watched that missed every single hot route that was hitting behind a vacated blitzer. It made me want to put my fist through my screen. Like every time I saw, I was like, oh, there is a linebacker blitzing and there's a slant right behind it. Just hit the slant, we'll move on to the next play. And he missed it every goddamn time. And I wanted to throw my laptop in like the 3 or 4 games I watched.
Yeah.
And just he turned down some open receivers, and I was like, okay. All I'm saying is, of the 3 quarterbacks that we picked that are going to had down seasons after having up years, 2 of ours lost their coaches, and 1 of ours lost their AD. The other one had Dabo Swinney the whole year. That's all I'm saying.
And I think Nussmeier mentioned it today or yesterday that he's still like working back from the injury. He's still not 100%.
I was surprised. He was a late add to the Senior Bowl, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was very surprised to see him out there. And I know that like he got benched or he got pulled for injury, whatever. He got benched, and it's like, all right, let's get this taken care of for the injury, and to see him back there, and then to kind of hear that he's still dealing with it. Like I know he's trying to improve his stock. He is not in a good spot right now, probably in the eyes of Scott in the draft. So like hats off to him. And like I said, I mean, Mendoza, one of the toughest players in this draft. Nussmeier is not far behind him in terms of like the ability.
He took so many shots.
He's 6 feet tall, and like he's not Diego Pavia, but he's not a big guy in the pocket, and he's just getting abused in there. So like I do give him credit for that for sure.
He it's kind of like a lesser Baker Mayfield, where he doesn't have the arm that Baker did.
Yeah.
But that like shorter, stockier, like gunslinger mentality. But he's I said stockier. He doesn't have the stockier build that like Baker does. Baker's a pretty thick guy, and Nussmeier, I think he was 202 came in. Yeah, it's really tough for a guy who's already injured and is still working back from injury, like months after his season ended.
Where are we at with Diego Pavia?
I did not look at him before this because he's 5'9" and 7/8 feet tall. Honestly, from all 6 guys at the Senior Bowl, he's probably been my favorite, and that's with Taylor Green there. That's with Nussbus there. God, who I'm forgetting someone as well. Cole Payton there. Like I think Diego Pavia's thrown the ball around better than anyone else. I will say the margin is very tight though. I don't really think a quarterback has truly broken out of that mold, but I do think Pavia's thrown the ball well. I haven't gotten eyes on him yet because I'm trying to like manage my time, and I don't know how the NFL is going to view a guy like we were talking about Bryce Young at like 5'10" and a half, and I know we're talking about as like number 1 overall pick. There's a big difference, but like I don't know with Pavia. I think he can throw it, and I think he's a super athlete, but the size is totally going to work against him.
But if you get a quarterback like that late, so I'm old enough to remember the 1985 draft where the big discussion was, does Buffalo take Bruce Smith or Doug Flutie number 1 overall?
Jim, you could have said I'm old enough to have been alive for the 1985 draft. Daniel, I don't know about you, but I don't think any of us like actually even fall in that category, let alone remember it.
Well, I'm old. We can just get over the fact that I'm old, right? But like as I
wise.
Yes. Well, and yeah. So anyway, going back to the whole Doug Flutie thing, right? Because he never really got a chance, but when he was on the field, he balled out, right? Because he played for Ditka in Chicago. He played for New England. He played for Buffalo. I think at one point he was with the Chargers for a little bit too. Like when he played, he actually did well, but nobody wants to put their coaching life on the line with a 5'8" or shorter quarterback.
Yeah.
I will add that like the difference in athlete from then to now is pretty substantial. I think height, weight, size, speed, strength, like it's linemen used to be like 260 pounds. Now they're 330 pounds. And so at the combine, he will be the second quarterback at the combine since 1999 to be under 5'10. The other being Derek King from Miami a few years back. So you want to talk, this is like outlier of outliers here for modern NFL. And like the game is quarterbacks. I think it's opening up for them a little bit to have those to be, it's okay to be shorter. If you look at like correlations for height to NFL success at quarterback, there isn't really one. So that's like something to think about is like, it's thus far, height hasn't really had a strong correlation to NFL success, but you're talking about an outlier of outliers, similar to like a Devonta Smith at wide receiver, where we were concerned about his weight, where he had like a 0 percentile weight, and he's turned out to be a really, really good player. Or Devon Witherspoon, the Illinois corner, who's now going to be playing in the Super Bowl, has turned into a really, really good career with his 0 percentile weight at corner. So there is precedence there of recent guys that have done it with weight concerns. So it would be so fun to watch Diego Pavia at least play. I just want to watch him play once.
Pavia, my take on Pavia is he's going to be a routinely UFL MVP. Like he will fall out of the league just because no one wants to really give him a shot. But he's a baller to the point where he'll go to a league that'll allow him to play like the UFL, and his level of talent just naturally as a thrower of the football and mover will let him be like Luis Perez on steroids.
I like that. I think I was listening to like summer scouting, I think on NFL Stock Exchange, and Sigma said something to the effect of like, just put this man as a running back or something, like find a way. And it was definitely like the Taysom Hill route. Like just get this guy in the field somehow, because he's so electric and he's so much fun. And he is just a baller through and through. And, after the season, seeing him, it is one of those things. But yeah, I look at the weight and, I'm like, when you bring up Tez and other guys like that, I think of like Tank Dell. Like the thing for me is not always like your ability to play at that. It's injury that then kind of follows that. And, you getting knocked around by these guys that are 330 pounds. So I think another piece as well that does play into it.
He's only 198 pounds at the Senior Bowl. So it's not
right.
Like
he's thick. Yeah. So I think with Pavia, it's not like he's super thin and frail. He is thick. He's just, like you said, a little bit shorter, a lot shorter.
Under 5'10" and almost 200 pounds versus Nussmeier, who's 6'1" and just a ball's hair over 200. Like that is significantly different when it comes to like what that frame can do and what it can handle.
Hey, that frame's about my frame. So you're saying what I'm hearing is I could be a successful NFL player because I'm built different.
Because you're Garrett Nussmeier?
No, because I'm not nearly tall enough to be Garrett Nussmeier, but I'm Diego Pavia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can't come up with the player right now that would be my frame build for them. I'd have to do some research.
Yeah, and we don't. I'm probably pretty close to Nussmeier, but I think I'm no longer 6 feet tall though, so I'm. Yeah.
Are you in the downhill slope?
Yes. So I am. The cool thing is when you're over the hill, it's all downhill from here. But why don't we pause for podcaster identification? Owen, do you want to let everybody know about the weekly huddle and all of the other content that you make?
Yeah, hopefully my laptop and StreamYard doesn't kill me during my podcast identification like you did last night. But speaking of, you can find me on Weekly Huddle at YouTube, where I am simul-streaming these live streams we do. I do twice a week minimum, every Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Last night was our Buffalo Bills themed one where I was on with Jerry Ostrowski, former Buffalo Bills offensive lineman, talking about wide receivers and Joe Brady and his impact on that offense. But we cover a lot of different things, whether it comes to positions and how it impacts different stuff. I know like a couple weeks ago we did like a more all-encompassing episode about was it the Broncos? Was it the Broncos we covered?
Yes.
And then obviously I'm here on Wednesday nights with Newt at 9 p.m. So you can catch me here at least twice a week. Sometimes I'm hopping on Fridays with the mock drafts. Other than that, I'm trying to find a way to get more content out on the YouTube channel and get some more live streams going with my current schedule. You can also just catch me over on Twitter where I drop my takes. And finally, you can catch me over at Cheesehead TV where I'll be writing the piece for their interior offensive line draft guide with Newt here for the first time. For the first time any cycle.
Cool. New.
You can find me here on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time talking about anything and everything dealing with the NFL draft. I don't even know what we're doing next week. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I'll tell you in a minute. I'll pull the schedule up.
We're going to be talking about something. It's going to be draft related. I do know that. I also
is it combine prop bets?
No, that can't be it already. That feels early. But regardless, I'm off base now, just completely. I also make content for Cheesehead TV as their lead draft analyst over on their YouTube channel. I'm on Twitter at NFL Draft _Weston. You can follow me on there where I share my stuff from Draft Professor, from Cheesehead TV, as well as links for the other inklings I do in the draft world. So that is me.
Daniel.
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter. I post. I cover the Jaguars for Action News Jax, CBS Fox station up in Jacksonville. I write there every day, but I also post. It's not just Jaguars. I do a lot with NFL data, whether it's PFF, Sumer, Next Gen Stats. I work a lot in R. The NFL is nice enough to give so much information and data publicly through R packages. So just learn how to code, and you have basically any statistic that you could ever want at your fingertips. So I do a lot with that, and I post a lot of numbers daily. Whether it's it may be I posted. Top 5 EPA for tight ends the other day. I posted off-target percentages from quarterbacks. A lot of different stuff that I try to give as much information as I can to Jaguar or NFL fans to be like, hey, it seemed like our O-line was really bad for Miami. It's like, all right, well, where does it compare to the rest of the league? So I try to do that to have people be as informed as possible. And whether that's in an article or just me posting some numbers on Twitter. I also do some deeper dives into, I did a story last offseason about NFL injuries and how that has been changing in the NFL. That's a huge topic right now with San Francisco's electromagnetic field or whatever it is. But injuries and ACLs are going downhill in a good way. There's been lesser injuries and lesser ACL tears. This year was the second fewest ACL tears since 2013, 2015, something like that. The kickoff has also massively helped on injuries on kickoffs. So a lot of that stuff, as well as maybe some trends in the NFL, whether it's average depth of target going way down. Pat Mahomes used to lead the NFL in throwing deep. Now he leads the NFL in throwing short. So some fun stuff like that. But I try to post there or in articles for Action Sports Jax.
Well, Daniel, it has been a lot of fun having you on Draft Professor. So definitely thank you. Like, this was, and your idea for like how to cover the quarterbacks. Like, I actually thought this flowed quite well.
Yeah, that was fun. I don't think that any of us had them in order, but
no, I mean, my first one was in order, but
yeah.
But
I jumped all around my rankings. So like I know I came off as a Ty Simpson hater. Like, by pure vibes, I think he's going to succeed. But like, I don't know.
I just wanted to talk about Luke Altmaier because I think of not the top guys. I think that he's a guy that could stick around in the league for like a decade as a really solid backup.
Since we're still alive, I have to throw out Tucker Gleason's name just because I have to get one Mac name out there.
There you go.
So go Tucker Gleason.
Nice.
So I want to thank also everybody watching. So Draft Professor does group mock drafts every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. We like to have 32 people drafting for 32 teams. So if you want to draft for your team, go to the Draft Professor Twitter page at NFL Draft Fanatic, no I in Fanatic, and you can sign up to draft for the team on the Draft Professor pinned post. So I am the person behind that account. So once you put your name into the reply, I will communicate with you as to how you draft for your team. So we'll usually have 2 people on the podcast. We'll have 30 people in the chat drafting for their teams. It is by far one of the best podcasts the Draft Professor puts out every week. Those 3-round mocks get watched by a lot of people. And you get to see how other people grade the players. You get to see, my team needs a safety. My team needs a linebacker. I always want to pay attention to who's drafting the linebackers, who's drafting the safeties, that type of thing. So you can definitely learn a lot. You will actually see Newt and Owen emceeing one of those podcasts a little bit later in the draft cycle. Next week, this podcast is doing Draft a Team. So that's going to be
nice.
Every podcaster snake drafting a starting 11 offense and starting 11 defense from the rookie pool. So there will be a guest on. So there's going to be 4 of us doing it. We're going to get to cover 88 players. So it'll be a lot of fun. So it'll be a little bit longer. It's going to last a little bit longer than an hour. So Newt, if you have bedtime, you may have to adapt. But
my bedtime on Wednesdays is always 3 hours later than a normal day just because I'm so wired from this.
Yeah,
That just makes you so mad. You're seething when you get off.
Well,
I
I
would
would say
say
January.
it's a lot of light. It stimulates your brain. You can't go.
I
to
was
bed
going to
yet.
say, it looks like you're just sitting in front of the spotlight, but January ends, and so I'll be probably enjoying some tasty beverages that will hopefully help kickstart my sleep towards the end of that podcast.
There you go. So I want to thank Daniel, Newt, Owen for putting together such a great quarterback show for the 110 podcasters at the Draft Professor, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you on a podcast again tomorrow night. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you, guys.